Well, in moving ahead, because there are a whole lot of...
No, this question comes, I think, on this same one. It comes from Henry. He says, sir, if the suspended judge is a member of the NJC, don't the NJC have the constitutional right to suspend their member?
Now, as I said, the composition of the NJC is made up of the Chief Justice of Nigeria and a senior judge of the Supreme Court too, the President of the Court of Appeal, President of Sharia Court, the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, and some top legal luminaries in Nigeria. So he is not a member. An ordinary judge is not a member of the NJC.
And this is not a routine disciplinary
action. This is not an internal disciplinary action.
But what if, since you say it's one judiciary?
There is one judiciary. What I mean by one judiciary and one bar is that in a federal system of government, this is the only area that we have a uniform system, a unitary system, one judiciary, one bar. That is it.
Well, I wanted us to see if we could put this also into what we're looking at, internal democracy. We've discussed this before. Now we're getting to see what has happened in the National Assembly, people who moved from one political party to the other. And the newest of them all is Edo State. And we see how some assembly members have actually moved to another political party, and suspension, vice versa, leading up. In fact, before then, Professor Jega has suggested that people lose their seats when they cross carpet.
You see,
you've been in the parliament as a young man then.
I was never in parliament.
No, okay. When was that? You were never in parliament.
I was never in parliament. Good. But let me explain this to you clearly.
Okay, I meant to say in the parliamentary system, which you discussed with us then, you were talking about how the cross-carpeting was then, people moving from one arena, or one side of the arena to the other, signifying that they have moved. How frequent was that, and how can you explain the difference between that time in the parliamentary system and what we have now in the presidential system?
You see, in the First Republic, the most noted cross-carpeting started in 1952-54 when Action Group and NCNC, the NCNC won an election, and 4 or 5 days before the first sitting of the Western House of Assembly, virtually half of the NCNC members crossed over. And that was how Zik could not become the premier of the West. Now, during the First Republic, Chike Obi won his election in Onitsha under the auspices of the NCNC. But when he got to the House of Assembly, he crossed carpet. So the politicians then devised a means. Once they nominate you, they will ask you to sign a letter of resignation, an undated letter of resignation, which you will sign before you contest election. The day you cross carpet, they will just tender that letter of resignation. That was how they were doing it in those days.
And it worked today.
It worked. But now, under the Constitution says the day you cross carpet, you lose your seat. But there is a proviso. Provided there is a division, one of the provisos is that if there is a division in the party, that now raises a question of fact and law.
As to what constitutes a division?
You see, we lawyers will say when it constitutes question of fact and law, you must take evidence. Now, learned Judge Justice Niyi Ademola made a statement that it is dishonorable for a member to cross the carpet. Based on that, I think the Attorney General of the Federation decided to bring an action that those who had crossed the carpet must resign. But you see, it's difficult to ascertain whether there is a division or not, except to take evidence. That is why we said for you to determine whether a man has crossed the carpet and he says, yes, I'm crossing because there's a division in my party. He has to go to the box to now give facts as to why you have to, see that there is a division. And between you and I, the PDP was divided some 6-7 months ago. The Baraje group holding simultaneous, conferences.
Yeah, but some said that they did not meet any requirements. Even INEC spoke up that they never met any requirement to be recognized as a political party.
No, not as a political party. They did not form a new party. They called it New PDP.
But New PDP was not known to law.
That's to them. You see, if you are dissenting in a party and you form a fraction in the party, you can call yourself any. We had, during the Second Republic, Senator Anna called himself authentic NPP. You see, so they said we are a new fraction of the PDP. And it is not for, INEC to dabble into the internal affairs of a party. It is the court that will determine whether your cross-carpeting is as a result of the provisos in the Constitution. And it's a question of fact and law. You cannot give judgment on an affidavit evidence, because even then there will be a conflict in the affidavit evidence. And the law is that once there's a conflict in affidavit evidence, you can only resolve it by going to the box.
Okay, part of what was also said by INEC, if I remember properly, is that provision is stated for the members of the National Assembly, legislature, but it's not expressly provided or stated for governors. Is that the case?
That is the case. I was privileged during the Zamfara case about 6-7 years ago, and the governor of Zamfara State, Shinkafi, won his election on the platform of ANPP. 2 years after that, he decided to, become a PDP man. And they sued. I was fortunate to be the leading lawyer. I think Adoke and myself, the present Attorney General, I led him in that case. And we were able to show that that provision in the Constitution does not affect the executive arm of governance, which is the governors. And we won. So the law is only in relation to members of their House of Assembly.
Should we have it
Why
for
it should be so, I don't know.
But do you think we should also have the same provision for governors?
Well, I'm not a politician. I am not going to say anything about that, because politicians, they know themselves, they know how to go about it.
But
But my own is to interpret the Constitution. The Constitution is not, clear. Not only that it's not clear, it never stated that governors must, resign.
If you were to clarify it, sorry, Sulaiman, if you were to clarify it, what would you recommend?
Well, morality, demands that once you win an election, on the platform of a party, if you want to leave that party, you should resign. That is morality. But morality and politics, they don't go together. They don't go
I wanted, sorry, Mark, but we're really out of time. We should be going for the news. But before we do that, I wanted to see if we can get something from you, no matter how short, because it's absolutely important. The missing Chibok girls is 66 days, and we haven't actually heard anything about that.
Nigeria is treading on a very dangerous ground. The Chibok girls is a human problem. You will find that when Nigeria was fighting this Boko Haram war, people were being killed. The international community never showed any interest. Because everywhere in the world, there is this type of thing happening. But when it came to the Chibok girls, when you have abducted human beings who are still alive, it became an international news. But the danger there for us is this. If we allow those girls to stay there for more than 6 months, they are going to be, indoctrinated. And if they are indoctrinated to the extent, after 6 months, and they are released, they become time bombs, for us in Nigeria. They may even become suicide bombers. So we must look at it that these are young girls, 12 to 16 years old. I am sorry to say this, many of them might not have tested sex, and they are going through that now. And we all know when a young girl starts having sex, how excited she is. And therefore, their psyche is going to change to the extent that if they decide to release them after 6 months, their orientation will have changed. And when they come into town, they might have been taught how to, bomb with the bomb blast. So we have to be very careful. What I will suggest to the federal government, that we should do all that it takes to negotiate for their release. Look, the Western countries will tell us that if you negotiate, you are opening up, a cankerworm or something. It's a bloody lie. 4 weeks ago, did America not, trade off 4 or 5 prisoners from for just one soldier? Did the Israelis not, because of one soldier, release over 1,000 prisoners? Don't let us deceive ourselves. These are human beings, and they are relatively young and susceptible to maneuvering now. We have to negotiate. Of course, how many Boko Haram convicts do we have in Nigeria today? They are not up to 50. We can release them, have these guys back, and then we start negotiating. The earlier we get them back, the better for this country.
All right, we have to thank you for coming on. Mr. Robert Clarke is a senior advocate of Nigeria, legal practitioner. We've been talking about different matters concerning the state of our nation.